And you saw all the JD Vance stuff. Talk about
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Thanks for doing this. Are you back in Illinois? Or are you in DC or?
DC for another maybe half this year, so we should get together.
Cool. Yeah, we definitely need to do that. All right, good deal. Good deal. All right. All right, welcome to the Jim Acosta Show. It is Monday, February 10th. I am uh, doing this show as a special edition of the Jim Acosta Show. I'm calling it America Under Siege. That is because what we've been seeing here in Washington over the last couple of weeks, the federal government currently dealing with a barrage of aggressive and potentially illegal actions, it seems, from the Trump administration. The courts are now weighing in as judges are warning the president and his team they are, in some cases, flat out violating the law. In just a few moments, I'm going to hear from a Democratic strategist, James Carville, about what the Democratic Party can do to stand up to Donald Trump. And you can see at the bottom of the screen, or however you're looking at this, the other guy on the screen here is former Republican Congressman Joe Walsh, a friend of the program, and always great to see Joe again. Thanks as always for doing this. I do want to just tick off a couple of headlines, walk folks through what we're dealing with today, but I am calling this America Under Siege. A constitutional crisis may be brewing in this first month of the second Trump administration. Hope you saw my post on Substack earlier today, primarily focused on Vice President JD Vance's notion on X. He put a post on X saying, quote, judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. Now, Vance, who went to Yale Law School, appears to be teeing up the idea that presidents can violate rulings from the courts. Mr. Vice President, I'd like to introduce you to something. It's called the Constitution. Perhaps you heard about this at Yale, but perhaps not. I've heard Yale is a good law school, so I'm guessing they do teach the Constitution there. And speaking of Trump versus the courts, think about this. This just came out earlier today. The courts versus Trump. The New York Times reporting this. A federal judge today said the White House has defied his order to release billions of dollars in federal grants, marking the first time a judge has expressly declared that the Trump White House was disobeying a judicial mandate. And we've also been talking about this, and Joe, I'll ask for your take on this in just a second. This plan that has been underway by the Trump White House to have Elon Musk going through various agencies and departments of the federal government. And obviously, the Treasury Department and its federal payment system has been a very big issue since the beginning of the Trump administration. Listen to this. 5 former Treasury secretaries, I'm going to ask you, Joe, about this in just a second. 5 former Treasury secretaries penned this op-ed in the New York Times. The title of the op-ed, 5 former Treasury secretaries say our democracy is under siege. Perhaps they got this idea from me. Perhaps great minds think alike. But 5 former Treasury secretaries said this: the nation's payment system has historically been operated by a very small group of nonpartisan career civil servants. In recent days, that norm has been upended, and the roles of these nonpartisan officials have been compromised by political actors from DOJ. One has been appointed fiscal assistant secretary, a post that for the prior 8 decades has been reserved exclusively for civil servants to ensure impartiality and public confidence in the handling and payment of federal funds. Joe, let me go to you on this because I don't know which one steams my shorts more today on this Monday. It's what's been happening over the Treasury Department and the federal payment system, and Elon Musk and his crew hoovering up all this data, or what JD Vance said over the weekend. I think let's start with what JD Vance said over the weekend. His floating this idea that the president can just, disregard what the courts say. If the court comes down with an order, we're just going to disregard it. Your thoughts?
First of all, Jim Acosta, it's so damn good to be with you. I am a huge fan of what you do. I'm not going to say anything about CNN or anything. I just love to see you out here doing what you do,
Yep.
preaching your truth, doing good objective journalism. I want Jim. I want to scream because
Yeah.
we don't do a good enough job of explaining to the folks exactly what's happening. And
Yeah.
here's exactly what's happening. And I love your America Under Siege. This is a constitutional crisis. We were supposed to have 3 independent branches of government. Forget about my former employer. Congress is gone. They're
Yeah.
completely subservient to Trump. I mean, Jim, think about it. A healthy legislative branch would have hauled Elon Musk in front of them under oath
Right.
2 weeks ago just to ask what he's doing. So forget about that. And then over the weekend, JD Vance basically signals that, you know what, we're going to ignore the courts. That's
Right.
what they're doing, Jim, laying the groundwork for the president of the United States to give his middle finger to court rulings. I, I mean, I don't know what else you can call that but a constitutional crisis.
And they're daring the courts on multiple fronts. They're trying to shut down USAID. Trump wants to do away with birthright citizenship. Hello, the Constitution again. It establishes what birthright citizenship is. And so, what do you think Trump is up to? Is this one of those things where it's, and we've heard this before. Steve Bannon has talked about this: flood the zone with bullshit, and hope that somebody isn't looking when they're trying to do something else behind door number three. Or are they trying to tee up a constitutional crisis that will go through the courts, maybe get to the Supreme Court where he has a MAGA majority, and perhaps, he can realize this dream of a sort of maximalist executive branch where the checks and balances are sort of thrown out the window?
I think, Jim, we got to imagine the worst. If you and I were
Yeah,
having a beer 9, 10 years ago, we
yeah,
would have never imagined that a president would lose an election and then commit crimes trying to overturn that election. I think Donald Trump now, since he's been reelected, Jim, he thinks he's untouchable. He thinks he can do whatever he wants. So he's going to push the limits. He told us he was going to try to be a king and a dictator from day one. He's going to push the limits. He believes he can get away with it. And Jim, when you think about it, who can blame him for thinking that way? I
mm,
mean, my former Republicans in Congress, my former colleagues, none of them will stand up to him. So if I'm him, Jim Acosta, I think I'm a king. I think I'm a tyrant. I think I can tell any federal judge to go jump, and that's what he'll
yeah.
do.
And I thought it was curious that JD Vance. I mean, talk about somebody who's been overshadowed since the beginning of this Trump administration. I mean, Elon Musk has basically become a co-president, which in a situation where you have a co-president, what is the vice president in all of this? But he throws this out there like we're just going to disregard this stuff. I mean, it seems to me that we are. I mean, I don't like to throw words around like America under siege, but if the White House can just do away with rulings with the judicial branch, what they throw at them, that explain that for the folks at home why that is so serious. Why is that so damn important?
And it's Jim, it's so funny, but I did
Yeah,
this on my show earlier today, just
yeah,
reminding my listeners about the basic founding principles in the Constitution: separations of powers, checks and balances. I
yeah,
mean, our founders did all of this, Jim Acosta, as you know, because they feared a king. They feared what we have right now. And I got a bunch of people saying, "Oh, Joe, these judges don't give a damn about government spending."
yeah.
That's not the point. The point is the judiciary is supposed to determine whether what Congress or the president does is constitutional. Period. And if they declare his birthright citizenship executive order unconstitutional, which it is, Trump's got recourse.
Yeah.
He can exact another executive order. He can try to pass a law. He can appeal the decision. But it's this these checks and balances that make certain America is not ruled by a king. And I want to wake this country up, Jim, because this guy wants to be a king, and plenty of his supporters, by the way, Jim, want that.
And and what's been your sense of how Democrats have handled this? Because in the beginning there was this sense of, well, let's just see how it goes. Perhaps he's changed. I mean, I just thought that was a fool's errand from the get-go. I mean, anybody who thought that Trump was going to be different this time around, or he's learned his lesson, or any of those tired old wish casting items, it's just it's never going to work. It's just never going to work out with him. He's always going to push the envelope, and then some. He's going to burn the envelope. He's going to set it on fire. um, your sense of how Democrats have been handling this?
There is zero opposition party, Jim Acosta, zero.
Yeah,
And look, you knew from day one what Trump was going to do. I knew
yeah,
from day one
yeah,
what Trump was going to do. Why were the Democrats caught flat-footed? It just amazes me. And some of them wanted to go down and meet with him in Mar-a-Lago and make good with him and break bread with him and coddle him. You can't do that with him. This is
Yeah.
not what we've ever had in America. And Jim, for the life of me, Democrats do not recognize this moment. And they're playing defense constantly when they got to fight, 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 and go on the offense.
Yeah. And there are some Democratic officials who are taking the administration to court. Letitia James in New York. I mean, that is happening at the state level. There's no question about it. But there's a problem. Elections have consequences. If
Yeah,
you don't have the numbers in Congress, you don't have them. And the other thing, Joe, I wanted to ask you about, because I always enjoy when you do this, when you relay these stories from your conversations with Trump supporters. I think you put one on Twitter the other night. You posted about one of these
yeah.
interactions. Talk about that. And what's been your takeaway when you talk to Trump supporters these days and when they're seeing what's happening? Because I know you used to be a Tea Party conservative. I
Yeah.
mean, can you imagine if Obama said to Bill Gates or some other tech guy, go through the federal government, do whatever you want, take everybody's data? It would be pitchfork and torch time in Washington, D.C. And it just seems it's amazing to me how Trump supporters can say, oh, well, I still believe in this guy, even though he's doing stuff that it should be completely diametrically opposed to their belief system.
Well, and Jim, even all of my former Freedom Caucus colleagues in the House
Right. Yeah.
who, right, we
Right.
all screamed. I mean, when Obama looked at a pen like he was going to pick up the pen,
Right.
we screamed.
Yeah.
Jim Jordan and I
Yeah.
called a press conference every time Barack Obama looked at a pen.
Yeah.
They've all folded to this. And I think the scariest, most difficult thing for America to understand is this. And it goes to the conversation I had Sunday with a longtime friend who is a diehard Trumper. And he and I went back and forth on what Elon Musk was doing. Come on, I
Yep.
said, this is wrong. Nobody should have this much power. I said what you said. Could you
Yep.
imagine if Barack Obama had George Soros do that?
Yep.
Bam, bam,
Yep.
bam, bam, bam. And
Right.
eventually we went back and forth. But eventually, Jim, he said what almost every Trump supporter has told me:
Yeah.
Joe, I don't give a damn. He's my guy. He's on my team. The other side is bad. He's going after the bad guys. And then he said, I don't care, Joe, if he's acting like a king. I don't care. Now, that
So
just saddens me profoundly.
yeah. Yeah. And it's like ride or die. It's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. It's Thelma and Louise. Let's hop in the convertible. Let's drive off the
And
cliff
it's
together.
Constitution be damned. It's
Yeah.
Constitution be damned. I mean, I was a
Yeah.
Tea Party guy, Jim, because I revered the Constitution. And they've
Yeah.
thrown that out to the window to pledge fealty to this guy. But America needs to know that. That's why Trump believes he can get away with a lot of this. Jim, I think I saw an approval number of 53% for Trump today.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he's got to be bathing in glory right now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and these polls, they can be kind of all over the place. I
Yes.
always like to see, we can see a group of polls, compare them with one another, see how the questions are asked, see what the various data points are. But you're absolutely right. When that CBS poll came out, it is rather alarming. And this goes back to conversations I was having with folks right before the election, people like Timothy Snyder, people like Ann Applebaum, people who think very seriously about the issue of autocracy and fascism coming into the United States. And one of the lessons that can be learned in all of this is that the sad state of affairs about autocracy, authoritarianism, fascism is it just works with some people. Some people
Yes.
are attracted to it.
And I have to confess, Jim Acosta, I come from the right. I
Yeah.
believe that my side of the right is more susceptible to it. Because, Jim, I've heard for years, even back in the Tea Party days, a lot of my supporters on the right would say, Hey, Joe, I want my America back. And I
Yeah.
don't care if I don't care what has to be done to get it back. So they're
Yeah.
perfectly willing to break rules and go and defy the Constitution to get this notion of their America back. Trump's doing that. And what do we have? And you speak so well to this every day. And
Yeah.
I'm so, God damn it, Jim Acosta, I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing, because you are
Thanks, Joe.
raising the alarm. I mean it, my
Yeah.
friend.
Yeah.
If the courts don't hold, we're screwed.
Yeah.
But then we got to take to the streets, and we've got to. That's where we need help from our Democrats to really describe for us what is going on.
Yeah. And you gotta talk to people, where they live. You got to use real talk. You can't dance around this. You can't
No,
tiptoe through the tulips. The tiptoeing through the tulips days are behind us right now. If I could get a red siren and mount it in the studio here, I would, because that's where we are right now. Joe, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Great to talk to you as always. It always feels like we've only been talking for like 5 minutes, but we've been talking for almost 15 minutes. Great to talk.
I
And
love
check out
Jim
Joe's.
Acosta. I love Jim Acosta. Thank you, brother.
Love you too. And check out Joe's Substack as well. It's terrific. Thank you, Joe. Great to see you.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks,
Really
man.
appreciate it. All right. So that